Happy Sabbath and good afternoon to everybody that is watching, both our Apple Creek family and for those of you that might be watching from around the world. I am Pastor Sean Ellis, the assistant pastor here at Apple Creek Seventh-day Adventist Church, and we have a very special Adventist Youth or AY program this afternoon. It's going to be actually about AY, its past, future, it's past, future. So let's try that one more time. Past, present, and future. And we have a great set of guests that will be able to talk about it from all of these different vantage points. But before we begin, I want to turn it over to our opening prayer, and then that'll be followed by our aim, mission, and pledge by one of our former AY leaders, Jessica. So let's go first to our opening prayer.
All right, let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for the blessings of the Sabbath. We are grateful for your loving kindness, your hand that has been on us throughout our entire lives. I pray, God, that those who are watching this program will be blessed, that our conversation will be fruitful, that your name will be glorified in everything that we do here on this program this evening. We thank you and we love you for Christ's sake. Amen. Okay, so we're going to now do the AY mission, and that is the salvation of youth through Jesus Christ. We understand youth ministry to be that work of the church that is conducted for, with, and by young people. The AY aim, the Advent message to all the world in my generation. The motto, for the love of Christ compels me. And the pledge is loving the Lord Jesus. I promise to take an active part in the youth ministry of the church, doing what I can to help others and to finish the work of the gospel in all the world.
Thank you very much for that. Now we're going to bring on our panel, and what we're doing is, again, it's past, present, and future of AY. So we're going to start to bring our panelists on, and we're going to have them introduce themselves and specifically talk about where is their experience with AY, wherever it may be in the world. So you can see we have on screen Jessica, we have Pauline C, Karl Hutchinson, Lincoln, and Collin. A couple of different generations there. And again, past, present, and we're going to discuss the future. So ladies first, Jessica, why don't you introduce yourself and your experience of AY? Where did you experience it, either here in Canada or abroad?
Okay, so I was actually born and raised in Jamaica until almost 15 years old, which is where my first encounter with AY took place. Now, I wasn't a leader at the time, but I was one of, I guess, the attendees, one of the young people. Right. So AY was a time, set aside for topics and activities that the church and, of course, the AY leaders thought was important for us, but also topics and activities that mattered to us as youth. The parents were very keen on taking us back to church on time for the program. And it's interesting because sometimes my brother and I would be dragging ourselves into church for AY, but having the opposite sentiment when leaving. We felt fed, nourished, and we had the opportunity to socialize with young people who are being groomed or were being groomed to have like minds. So, that is to love the Lord and to be followers of him. And most of which we actually didn't see more than once a week. So it was nice. We had the same experience when we came to Canada, when we moved here, but it was here that our friend groups were comprised now predominantly of Seventh-day Adventists. And it was nice to be around young people who share the same faith and beliefs as you on a more regular basis. To look across the room, even during our programs and our activities, and see different faces, but worshipers of the same God.
That's fantastic. All right. And Pauline, How about your experience? Where did you experience AY?
AY started out in Jamaica for me. I went to Christian school, so in the morning at church, we were more, we had to kind of stay with our parents, sit with our parents. And so you look forward to AY because AY would be a time when you meet with your friends from school, the younger people, and you can hang out with your friends during AY. AY also gave an opportunity to show off your craft because you were involved. Back then, almost every young person was involved in AY to some degree. So we really look forward to that. It's a kind of playtime too, right? So I kind of left church in Montego Bay in like when I was 17, right? And then I went off to university and never came back. I came to Canada. But at that time, in terms of leadership, it was not, my leadership took place more here, but enjoying AY and being a part finder was more in Jamaica, which to me was an outstanding experience for me, and what I know has kept me in the church. Because if you would listen to my especially my mom, she would tell you, okay, Pauline is the one that's not going to stay in the church. She asks too many questions, because I always wanted to know why, why this, why that. And that's why I tell parents today that when our children ask why, let's find the reason to tell them why. Because if they understand why, then they have a reason to stay. And so, I came here, and then being at Apple Creek, my entire leadership just scaled up because, again, I was given a lot of opportunities, especially under Pastor De Silva. When we moved to the church, I was the first AY leader at Apple Creek and at the new church. And so being a part of FAY, became the FAY president, understand the big picture of Seventh-day Adventist youth, and having the relationship with North American Division and all those great leaders like James Black, Doggett, Medley. And I'll talk more about that when we go further down, that, we have to really realize that we have a big picture. And when our kids realize how the huge army that they are part of, then they want to become and be a part of. Presently, in terms of leadership, I sit on the TADSB board, the Ontario Conference Education Board, and as well as Ontario Conference, where there are always issues coming up about youth leadership. And just pleased to be part of the sponsors for FAY here at Apple Creek, as well as Home and School, which we work closely with Pastor and the youth team. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So I want to now go to the two sets of generations here, Lincoln and Collin Morgan. So we'll start with the elder, Lincoln. So can you tell us where you experienced AY from?
Okay, I experienced AY from a church in Port of Spain, Trinidad. It's called the Dundon Street Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I was just a 12, 13-year-old boy. So we followed the routine of what the leaders did. However, we moved to Sanwa Avenue, a much bigger church where we had built. And there's where I was given some leadership qualities, like I was asked to be the AY secretary. And but what is interesting about AY? I say AY, it sounds funny in my mouth because I know it as MV, missionary volunteer. Okay, that's what I know. I was told that the AY started off because of people of other religious backgrounds were in Africa, and they called themselves missionary. And what they were doing was wrong. So we then and other people couldn't use the name missionary anymore because it was supposed to be an ugly name. That's why AY came up, Adventist Youth. Anyhow, so in Stanmore Avenue, we were young people, and we had some interesting activities. One of which is we had morning watch. That was the main feature of one of our AY missionary services. You have to learn your your morning watch, and we had bands, different bands. They were given names. So each person not must, but we all have to get up and say our morning watch text. That was exciting. And we had also, we have to report. We had a reporting card, and that gives us an idea of what we have done during the course of the week. Help someone, do this, do that. So it was very interesting, and we look forward to it because it was an activity that we all engaged in. And we had also the older people were like they were monitoring us, they were teaching us. So we moved from one stage to the next. My AY experience in Montreal was of such that I had to take a leadership role, which we did quite well. But we also did some plays in AY, not long plays, small plays. But AY was always a very interesting part of our growing up because it helped us, it modeled us to be better leaders. Our influence was of such that our friends wanted to be in our AY meeting because after AY we had social. However, I wish that the young people will be more active in the AY services because Adventist youth is for the young people, not for old people like I am. But I will still support them because it's an activity that we need to have in our churches so we can experience, so we can have the young people move on. We should just pass the mantle to them so they can lead out as we did in the past. But AY is a very good ground for trading. It's a good ground for being able to speak in public. AY is a platform for the future eloquent speakers of tomorrow. AY is necessary in our organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Lincoln, or sorry, Collin?
Yes. I have a subsequent story, just like my dad, but mine started, of course, in Montreal. Being a young person, of course, being with my dad and also him being a AY leader also helped me in the form of being part of AY. So when we moved over to a different church from Westmount to LaSalle, as I got to about 16, 17 years old, we started to also follow the footprints of having the various different AY programs. That, in a sense, helped me. So when I moved to Toronto, I was subsequently able to take the leadership role of being an AY leader. And then from there, being also a sponsor. Being an AY leader here in Toronto, being with the Apple Creek Church, I was also able to work with Sister Pauline Christian, and being part of the FAY group, and also various different activities and meetings that were performed, and also to help enhance the various youth around our area, which is the eastern part of Ontario, or Toronto, I should say, when it comes to our youth. So it helped me a bit. It helped me a lot, actually, in formulating who I am, as well as getting involved with other groups, other individuals, planning, also taking more of a leadership role in my own personal life, getting closer to God. And I think these are some of the things that, for me, has helped in my development.
You're muted.
Karl, if you can share with us your experience, please.
Well, my experience is a little bit different in that when I came here, I was quite young, so I was about 12 years old. So I didn't really have much of an experience of AY in Trinidad. I just knew about what my brothers, my older siblings, spoke about. But my experience started more so here in Canada, and watched a lot of the AY programs. And I always liked the idea of challenging the norm. When I was asked to be an AY leader at Apple Creek, then Aging Court, back in Norbert Road, I wanted to do something different. So the whole idea was to bring a different perspective to it. So with the team that we gathered, and being a person who loves drama and loves presentations and things of that nature, we wanted to bring a different flair to it. So we introduced some new concepts, some new ideas to sort of engage more of our young people and challenge them in different ways. We did a lot more dramatic presentations, a lot of poetry, a lot of opportunities for people to create things, and we did things like change. AY at that time, it was something that was done in the basement or done in the other auditorium, so to speak. We used to have a gym to the side, and that's where AY was kept. And we challenged that. And we said, well, wait a minute. We wanted to bring some respectability to this thing called AY, or that time changed its name to, moved its name from Missionary Volunteers to AY. And so the challenge was that let's put this program in the bulletin and let's give it the same recognition that the midday service gets. So let's put the whole idea, the whole programming, the whole concept in the bulletin, and let's advertise it just the same way. So we did a few things of that nature, and we made it something really exciting. The intent was to really attract our young people and to get them engaged and have them be the pillars behind this whole piece called AY.
I want to thank you all for that. What's wonderful is the different experiences, but there's certain kinds of themes that are starting to come out of it. One of leadership, personal development, spiritual growth. And one of the things I want to ask before we dive in a little bit deeper is, out of all the experiences you had in AY, what was your most fun AY program, AY experience, AY story? And I'm also going to open this up to our viewers. For those of you that are Adventists, you might have a favorite AY story to share. You got to make it brief because it has to fit in the chat, but we would love to hear from you. We don't want this to be a one-way process. We want it to be as interactive as possible. So our team here are watching the chats, and they'll post up whatever you put in. Keep it brief though. But anyone want to start off? What was your favorite AY program?
I guess I can start. I actually have many, but two favorite experiences I can recall, and these are actually me being a youth, and me as a youth leader. As an attendee, a regular youth, I remember Adventist Icon, and many of you may recall that name. Basically, the Apple Creek American Idol, it really was. And at the time, my friends were actually the AY leaders. So it was about 8 weeks, or it could be more. I can't remember. It just seemed like a long time. And it was back-to-back programs every Sabbath of musical talent being displayed similarly to American Idol. They were judges who would give positive feedback, obviously not as cruel as American Idol judges could be. It was like a real show. So the talking, the showtime sound effects, the testimonies, life history, and of course the judges, and there would be winners at the end. It gave the young people an opportunity to share the gifts that God has given us on a big stage and in front of our loved ones and visitors, but also to hone their public speaking and public presence skills, right? A lot of young people have since gone on to do big things in and out of the church and can really thank God, myself included, that they have had the church as the perfect training ground, to be honest. I'd say as a leader, one of my favorite experiences was a program that we did. As a matter of fact, it was kind of like an activity, to be honest. It was the Egypt to Canaan scavenger hunt. So the youth were divided into groups, and they had to use clues to direct them to places in and around our church that would give them pieces to the map of the journey from Egypt to Canaan. Once they collected all the pieces, they had to rush to assemble the map, and similar to a puzzle, right? And tape them together. We gave them the tools, and they would rush down the center aisle of the sanctuary with their maps in hand. And of course, we'd spend some time exploring the actual story and gather some takeaways for all of us. So it was exciting and really tested their problem solving skills, mine as well as a leader, because we had to figure out how we were going to make this work. But also the knowledge of the story. By doing the activity, they would have to know, and even their ability to search the Bible. And they loved it. And we used to do a lot of activities that really brought the Bible stories to life for them.
That's great. Anyone else that has a story they'd like to share? Yes, Pauline.
I have a lot of experiences that I really love. Again, because I've been in a part of the AY team for most of my life. But what stands out and what has been created a profound crossroad for me in understanding the relevance of our church and the relevance of our youth was when we started collaborating with the U.S. NAD, the U.S. American leadership, youth leadership, with some massive minds behind Adventism. I realized that our church was not a small thing. And I really miss those opportunities, because you go to these youth congresses and you're able to learn different things, to scale up your leadership, having your young people learn different, skills, leadership skills. Also, they had an opportunity to meet other young people around the world. So they realized that Apple Creek young people were not just it, or Meadowvale young people, or Toronto East. So it's an ability to bring all people across the spectrum together in Canada or in Ontario, and then take them across to the States, where you open up to all the young people from different states, and to realize that we serve this amazing God and that we are a part of an army, not a little church in the corner here. Because I know during FAY time, I know I had challenges with most of the pastors across the GTA about losing their young people to a youth rally that comes once a year or twice a year, right? Because that was a movement. So it's critical that we share with our young people that Adventism and AY is not an activity or a program. It's a movement. It is a continuum. It's constantly moving, gathering speed to advance the work of God. We are mobilizing our young people, and at the same time, we're inspiring them and motivating them. So they have, when you feel that you're part of an army, it does so much for you, because you realize that, I'm not alone. And whatever I am fighting for is larger than life. But it has to be from a movement point of view. And I think that's where we need to get our young people back together, because everybody is working in a silo. That synergy is not there, where they're coming together saying that, yes, on the overall, and I hear Dr. Lincoln saying that, yeah, we pass on the baton, we let our kids just go and do it. Moving on, putting our kids or putting our young people in leadership space doesn't mean that the people with the knowledge just back off. You take a lesser role, being a supportive role, to ensure that they go right and they do right. But we feel that it's a one piece over here and a one piece over here, and it's so disjointed and dysfunctional. So we got to ensure that the infrastructure that we set up, the pillars are strong and the supporting fundamentals are strong. So, that piece there, the whole collaborative piece with us and the NAD, for me was great, as well as the youth retreats, going on those youth retreats, Peterborough, these different sites, camping, bring the kids together, realize that they're part of a big family. That cannot be replaced by anything else. So those pieces, I think we need to ensure that we can bring our young people together by these different activities, that they realize that, you know what, when you are a part of this arc, in Apple Creek, we talk about the village, and we talk about this great village and the great tribe. It's critical. So our kids know that when you go out there, when I go out there in corporate Canada and I start out to do anything to gain the kind of power I need to move to the next level, I'm not starting out by myself. I'm starting out with me, my church, the close people in the church who are supporting you, the elders in the church. Come on here. I don't understand why our children, our young people even leave the Adventist church. Because the system in which the Adventist church is set up is so amazing to provide excellence in almost everybody, but we are not sure how to use the system, and we are going, peace parting it. Like, we are over here and we're over there, and someone say this, and no, the togetherness, let's get back together. That's where it's going to start, and that's where it's going to end. So let's collaborate, get speed, get the young people moving, mobilize them, motivate them, inspire them, engage them, and then let them go, let them run. Take the world all over.
All right. Pauline, you went from the past to the present into the future. We're going to come back and revisit some of those. But I want to highlight some things that came up in the chat in terms of favorite AY programs. We have Pam from Live saying musical programs. And I think it was Vivine that said boy quartets and girl trios. And, one of the important things that's really that we need to understand about AY, and I'm not just talking about Apple Creek, I'm talking about Adventist youth as a whole in the Adventist system. Its original objective was to save young people from sin and to guide into service. And when we go and work with our young people, grow them spiritually, and train them in service for God, it has, as Pauline was saying, overflow benefits elsewhere.
Personal life.
Jessica mentioned how it helped her in her work, and so many other things as well. Now, what I want to do is I want to sort of shift gears a little bit. We talked a little bit about the past. I want to talk. We are very fortunate to have 3 AY leaders from different periods in Apple Creek's history. We have Karl, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is from Norbert Road, that you had started up AY then, and Pauline, that started up or continued AY in the new Apple Creek, and Jessica. Now, what was your tenure? How many years ago was that? Not too long.
Wow. I think it was a total of 4 years, so 2 terms. I think the first 2 I was the assistant, and then the next 2 or the last 2 was when I became the leader. Yeah.
So we have leadership from different perspectives. So I want to hear briefly, because we want to try and get as much in within the time. What it was like for you. In your case, Jessica, it was taking over. For Karl and Pauline, starting up, some of the challenges. Collin, I would love to hear from you because you participated as one of the team members, what it was like for you. And Lincoln, I would also love to hear from you, from your perspective, what it was like to see the leadership. And what I want us all to do as we're listening is to see what's the same, what's changed. We're going to talk a little bit now about the current challenges in AY before we get to the future. So Jessica, actually we'll start with Karl. Karl, if you can just share with us, what was it like? Start from scratch an AY program.
Well, we had some of the similar challenges in that our young people were somewhat distant, to some extent. And Pauline brought up a couple of good points that I really want us to take heed to. And that is the understanding of this larger army that we have in young people across, not just at Apple Creek, but in Toronto and the US. A couple of things that we did. We had exchange programs that we used that really helped us when we went to the US a couple of times, and went to Montreal, and we exchanged programs back and forth. And what that did was it give the young people a sense of ownership, a sense of I have now some major responsibilities in putting things together. As a matter of fact, many of our young people wrote a lot of the shows, a lot of the programs, and because we were doing a lot of the drama, because drama is my neck of the woods, so to speak. We had people write plays and write shows, or write productions that they would put on at AY time, and so they got motivated by this because they were doing something. They weren't just participating in something because somebody asked them to do something. They were the creators. They were the originators of certain ideas. And so when we had to go to places like Collin Gardens and when we went to Montreal and when we did all these different things, there was a sense of pride because there was some ownership involved in giving them that accountability, giving them that responsibility. So I think once we understand the importance of sharing the wealth, not just in Toronto or not just at Apple Creek, but sharing the wealth right across the globe, I think we're going to find that the excitement builds on its own and that enthusiasm is there. If I'm limited in my scope and I'm only thinking within that local circle of just Apple Creek, then after a while I'll get somewhat tired and I'll get somewhat bored. But when I'm motivated with different experiences, it challenges me a little bit differently.
I appreciate that. Over to you, Pauline. What was it like now? So you go from Norbert Road and this beginning, this foundation started by Karl and his team. Now you're working under Pastor De Silva. And what was it like to now carry that torch? What was the challenges that you experienced? How did you grow and move forward?
You know, it's when you have a pastoral team that is very youth oriented and very supportive of the leadership, right? Especially our young people. So here we're in a brand new church, big church. So this is right beside City Hall. And okay, so what newness are we going to bring to the forefront so we can expand, evangelize, bring, at least retain our young people, claim the one that we have lost, and also gain the ones that we should be out evangelizing for. And, just to piggyback on what Karl is saying in terms of seeing the picture bigger than just us, because I know that we were able to see the different contributors that we had in our church, and how can we mobilize those and leverage those. I remember being a part of teams, Karl team, doing youth event across the board. So you're bringing busload of kids to be a part of either GC or whatever. It's something that the kids are looking forward to, right? So I remember coming into our church, and there are people in our church like saying no drums, no this, no that, no this and that and the other. We were able to get support from the leadership because we had a pastor that understood it, but he was also politically savvy and socially adept as to how he's going to navigate the different, I wouldn't say fractions, but the different people within the church. In every church, you're going to have different individuals, right? So, but the pastor was able to help us navigate along those lines to ensure that we got support from our young people. So, for example, when we're doing AY, there would be no other event taking place during AY. And I know I would be walking all the halls of the church. There would be no event, no meeting, because AY is happening in the evening. Don't be disrespectful, because you would not have a meeting during Divine. So there would be no AY taking place there. Another thing, during the first part, we were getting like 300-400 people returning back to AY. And every AY was planned, because we realized that if you do not plan your AYs, that means you're planning to fail. We had like core values that we got to ensure that would have to be a part of all the AY programs in terms of its Christ-centeredness, in terms of participation. So we would ensure that parts of the program, you would have the early teens would be taking care of the preliminaries. The meat of the program would be the adult, the youth that are in that core group, right? And then the remainder, then you kind of fraction it off to ensure that it's very inclusive of the 11 to 35. So there has to be a deliberate way of how you're going to plan to engage to build capacity. And so that was there, and we had people like Karl behind it, and Mr. Sinclair, Pastor the Pathfinder. So Pathfinder, AY, home and school, everybody was just working together. That's why people were so worried about Apple Creek because Apple Creek was a powerhouse, because we were so together as a family and we're doing things. Everything has to be about excellence. You have the Pam Langdons and the Vernon Langdons and everybody over your head. Everybody's supporting you, even though they're not in front of the camera. But they're supporting, because our church and our young people, they mean a lot to us. So we got to make sure that things are done right and we're leading the team. Because when we go across the board, if they know any church, they ask you, if you ask them across the border, if there's one church that they know in Canada, and they're going to tell you that the church in Canada is Apple Creek. That's how Apple Creek stood out. We need to take that back, because we want to own the skills, the talent, the resources we have in our church, and get our young people, get the fire under their seats and get them moving in the right direction, because we have a lot to be proud of.
Okay, great. Now, thank you for that. What I want to do now is I want to go to Lincoln, because what I'm hearing from Karl and Pauline is how they were taking AY bigger than the church, looking almost outside of the immediate community to a larger community. What was it like during your time when watching the leaders? Did they have the same big vision with AY programs?
Okay, as a young man, AY was it for us young people. Why? Because we had in our churches mothers and fathers in Israel, and they took care of us in one-on-one ways. Quite often, look, my father was not a Seventh-day Adventist, but my mother was. And some of the people who were like my monitors were like Karl's mother and father, and other people whom I respected. So even though our parents were not all together there, the young people were monitored and were fathered by the older ones in church. The older people took us under their wings and trained us, taught us how to speak properly, taught us how to do things. And by so doing, we found ourselves being attached to them as a family. In Port of Spain and in, I won't say Westmount, in Port of Spain and in Cleveland Temple, we had a band of young people who were so together because the older people had us in their thoughts. When there was a program like E. Cleveland came to Trinidad in the 60s, and I remember quite well that the ministers of Trinidad and Tobago were told that something was going to happen great there. And then what they did, they didn't know who was coming. They had all the young people working with the public, along with their ministers. And we had a program we called Operation Fireside. That is, we were going about to the community and giving them Bible studies, not realizing that Cleveland would be coming, but we were told that we just have to do what we're doing. So the young people and the older ones went about doing, giving Bible study to the community at large. So when Cleveland came there, his harvest was great because the people were prepared. And that's one thing that I remember quite well, how well the young people work with the older person. Like Karl's father was a leader there in Trinidad, and he did a good job with the young people. And I always remember that people like Bertie Brown and other people who were there, they treat us as their own. And it was very invigorating for us young people. You know, they wouldn't leave us alone. They took care of us. So we were a big family who more or less went out as a company, and we were hard to be stopped. Our young people in the community who were not Seventh-day Adventists, they too wanted to be a part of us. And some of them came and joined the church. So that era was something that I will always remember. Or one of the most vivid experience I've had as AY leaders and officers, we had a program and we called it, I think it's Judgment, I think. But what we did, the Pathfinders, the Pathfinders and the Master Guide got together, and the program was called Judgment. So during the AY program, those of us who were dressed in pilot uniform and other such things came, closed the doors, and judgment started. And the people were quivering in their boots because we had people who were there as a judge, and they were asking questions about their belief. And those who were then able to answer the questions were put away. But it was a serious thought because people, when they were asked, who is this person? What do you believe? What's your belief? And so on. People couldn't answer the questions. So they were asking some of us not to call them, but we called anyone. So they have to give an account of who they are and what they believe. And that was one of my most invigorating and beautiful AY meeting we had because people saw the reality of the judgment and they took it seriously because, as I said, no one said to the congregation at large what is going to happen. We just came and closed the doors and nobody can leave. It was very dramatic, very real, but that is one of my experiences that I had as an AY leader in Port of Spain, Trinidad.
All right. Now, I want to shift to Collin before I get to Jessica. So, Collin, I want to get a perspective as you, as a person on the team. You mentioned something that really caught my interest, how AY was really important and formative in your personal development. So as you are part of a team, or maybe as a leader, we're hearing how the AY has always been seeking to push much further than the walls of the church. How did that shape some of your own personal development into the person that you are?
Well, you know what? I mean, of course, I have my dad that's here that also helped shape it. He didn't explain a lot of things. This is the first time I'm hearing about this judgment scene that they did. But I think what it is that just in hearing his excitement, also seeing the people who's around, I was part of it. I wanted to also be part of it when I grew up. Being one of the AY leaders after Jackie Lashley, and I think it was 04, 05, or 03, 04, I was a little bit older, but I still wanted to be involved. It's something that a lot of my friends who are my peer didn't want to touch. And I should just say that a lot of people in this generation didn't want to be part of that group. For what reason, I'm not too sure. But how I wanted to see how we can do it is by doing different activities, doing different events, and also just something my dad instilled on me. He kept on saying, maybe I wasn't listening. He said, when AY really is us as youth people going out in the community, and then you come back in and explain what you did or bring some of the people that you spoke to into the church that evening. That's what was a whole meaning of, they said MV, and of course you have AY. So that was explained to me. So I was thinking, okay, how can we incorporate that? We did certain things, went out to the community. We also had different exchanges when it comes to, I think we went with Karl, I think in 02 to Detroit. We also did some things with Montreal, and we had some other different churches that had different exchanges as well as working with Pauline. I think what it helped me and also helped others that had the same role is knowing how to work with others, knowing how to work in a group, also in planning and doing different events so that you can then see how others work. Everyone has different ideas, but it's how we can come together to do the same goal, which is to bring others to Christ. We're working with the youth. A lot of youth don't have that same interest anymore in AY because maybe it wasn't explained to them. Maybe we dropped the ball. I'm not too sure. But I know from my perspective, when I was young, if my church that we went to, which is a LaSalle church, didn't have AY, which sometimes I didn't, we would go to the church where we used to go to, which is Westmount, and we'd have to either get dressed or whatever have you and participate. And I was eager to go. I don't see that eagerness right now. But that was something in the mid-70s and 80s that I experienced. And it was a fun time for me. It was very rewarding. I got to be in different plays and different activities. But I think it's something now, things have changed. We still serve the same God, but we still have to find a way to make God relevant in our lives. And like what Pauline said, this is the best thing you can ever do is be part of AY. It's how we can now include and bring that excitement to others. Because to this day, my dad lives with me now. I can hear Karl talk about my dad. I can hear Priest and Barrow. I can hear other people talk about what he did as the AY leader. He's never said anything like that to me. But that's the experiences that he has and he holds greatly. And I think if we can have, each person has to have their own experience, but if we can do that and also bring others, our non-Adventist friends, to not only just the church, but just to understand who God is, it makes a big difference in our lives. I hope I answered your question.
Oh yes, yes, you definitely did. I want to segue a little bit to Jessica now, because what I'm also hearing too is some different generational perspectives, the value of it, how it was transformational. But as we all know, the times have also changed and things are slightly different. So, for example, it used to be missionary volunteers. And I believe in 74, they called it AY, Adventist Youth. Missionary volunteers has a very specific meaning to it. AY has also a different context to it. So, Jessica, when you were AY leader, and maybe it's AY that you've experienced in other churches too, not necessarily Apple Creek. We want to look at it as a whole. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit about the Creek as well. What kind of changes did you see? What challenges did you experience in terms of shifts based on what we're hearing, where we started from and where we're going now?
Okay, that's a triple-barreled question. So I'm glad that it was mentioned. I noticed someone in the chat mentioned it, and a few of the other panelists had mentioned it as well, that the eagerness and the respect of AY and MV and the meaning of it, it's for some way along the line, things changed. Young people's points or their needs or their focus has changed. Collin mentioned that, maybe somewhere along the line, the ball was dropped. I'm not really sure what happened between them being leaders and me becoming the leader, and, past my time. But the focus was for me to get young people and the church at large excited about AY as a movement and a training ground again. We needed it at the time. We absolutely needed it. If you notice, the cluster of children and youth we've had for these last, 10 years was very close in age, and they were growing quickly. But for some reason, they became, when I became leader, I noticed, and it could have happened before I became the leader, but I noticed at that point that many of them weren't as engaged as they could have been and were seemingly growing disinterested. So long story short, whether it be the games or the dramatics or whatever it is, my team and I wanted to find ways to engage them spiritually through giving them things to do and to think about and discussions. And that aspect of MV, as a matter of fact, that wasn't, I hear that was what we were supposed to be doing, but for some reason it just never transferred over to when I started to really understand what AY was meant to be. And yes, it has changed over the years. The young people, their needs have changed over the years. And one thing that stuck out for me was the decrease of support and attendance from the older youth. And instead, the younger youth and preteens and even some children would be eager to join AY programs. I was on the Metro East Youth Association board for the time that I was the AY leader. And for many leaders across the church, as a matter of fact, it was hard at first because all of us, we knew that, as Pauline said, that if you don't plan, you plan to fail. So we knew that what we had, obviously under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, we knew that these programs and these initiatives had a lot to offer, even the adults, right? But we decided to focus on the youth and the children and the people that were actually attending. And I thank God that we did that, because Apple Creek is now seeing these same preteens and children fully engaged in church, and some have since taken over and are leading AY ministry and other church programs today. Mm-hmm. So I guess the next part of your question, what was the last part?
I think actually you covered a really good piece of what I was trying to get at, because one of the things I think is it's hard to recognize when it's happening is the change in society, and how that change in society plays out in our understanding. So, for example, 30 years ago, you had a 9-to-5 job. Your boss wouldn't call you after work hours. Now we all have devices where it's 24/7. And when they say work-life balance, it's normally your boss saying to balance your life so you can do more work. So, so but we haven't considered how that's impacting our youth, who by yesteryear's standards, most of our youth today would be maybe on their second house, and most youth today are trying to just get their first house. So maybe anyone, I'm opening this up to anyone. It's a challenge, and are we recognizing it enough, and what can we do? And then from there, we're going to talk about the future. But I want to just talk about the challenge of our young people today and how that might be playing out in the current AY that we're seeing.
Let me chime in on that. I think one thing that we fail to realize sometimes is that change is inevitable. Our environment will change, things that we do at work, the whole social structure changes. But what doesn't change is the need for development. What doesn't change is the need for people to become stronger leaders. That's a constant. And one of the things that I selfishly took away from the Seventh-day Adventist Church is the fact that in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, it prepared me for leadership in other areas. Mm-hmm. In the AY program, I was able to glean certain skills that I wouldn't have otherwise received other places. I was able to take those skills into the corporate world and use them to get financial gain from it. So, that is something that's going to be a constant, the need for leaders, the need for developing our young people. And here's where I have a little bit of a challenge in that we tend to see AY as being a young people's program. And really what it is, it's an opportunity for the church to come together to grow our young people. If there is any one area that we should be really holistically focused on, is the development of our young people. That should be our number one concern. Some people ask me, well, how come you don't have an official position as such? I said, I don't need an official position to lead our young people. I will do it no matter what. And it doesn't really put you in a particular age category. It doesn't put you in a particular realm of, is he a youth leader or not? No, this is a responsibility and accountability that is called upon us individually to make sure that we are influencing our young people in one way or another. Take up some sort of a responsibility. So it's not about that AY time that happens, whether it's in the wintertime between 4 and 5 or between 6 and 10. And that's where we miss it, because we think of it as a program as opposed to a way of life. This is what we do to really encourage growth in amounts of our young people. So whether or not it's 9 to 5 or whether or not it's between a particular time frame, we're going to find different ways to tweak it and make it work so our young people are getting the leadership skills that they need.
Amen. I want to thank you for that. Now, we're running short on time, and I know we could go on a lot longer on this, but in the time that we have left, I want to talk about the future. We've talked about the past experience. We talked a little bit about the challenges of the present, but what about the future? We have seen under COVID how it has really changed the nature of ministries, shut down some ministries, taken other ministries time to restart. What about AY? Now, I mean, we're all now trying to look into the future. That's hard to do. But from your vantage point, what do you think AY needs to be in a post-pandemic world? Because we know the Bible says things will only be getting worse. So what should we be doing to do this mission that we've been called to do for our youth?
Okay, as an older person, I'm not involved as much as I used to, but I'll say this, that AY and the church must embrace technology. Technology is where we are going now. And in order to improve our cohesiveness, we must use technology. Regardless if we like it or not, it's the way to go. And I believe that in the future, we will be very progressive if we use technology to our advantage. And that means putting the message in such a way that we will be working together as a family, making sure that the world acknowledges and knows who we are and who's coming soon. So I say technology is our threshold, is our nucleus to move on.
So I have, I think 3 things come to mind, just based on our discussion, as well as just, probably, again, we can talk about this for a very long time, is first and foremost, I would like to see, and as Karl mentioned, an engagement of the church in youth ministries. It is not on the youth leaders or the youth, the AY team. It is not solely their responsibility to minister to all the young people of our church. I don't think it's not effective. It's not cohesive as a church, and it does not push the kingdom of God. And push our ministry as a church and what we're called to do. I would like to see parents become more involved, or get back to being involved, I should say, in ensuring that their children and their young people are where they need to be when they need to be there, as it relates to the youth initiatives, programs, whatever you want to call it, to ensure that they're actually there. Because that's one of the struggles that I myself encountered, where parents are less concerned about where their kids are during these periods when we are having programs for the youth. I agree with technology that is something that is needed. It's needed to continue our ministry and to continue to expand and to help us to gain traction as it relates to ministering outside of our church. I would say that I would want it to be hybrid. Or I would like to see it become hybrid, where we can have this continuation of the virtual space for those who cannot physically attend, but still having the in-person meetings and activities, because it's not just about the assembling of the saints together. It is also for people's mental health and their well-being and their ability to socialize in front of the camera or behind the camera, or whatever you want to call it, not being in front of the camera, to actually be among a group of living, breathing human beings. Succession planning. And now more than ever, we see the need to train other people to do what you do as leaders, as a church, moving on, and to use the systems and the infrastructures that we know are available to us, or that we have developed from one term to the other, so that as generations move on and the new leaders take their position, they won't be starting from scratch as they plan to prepare for ministry. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that. And anyone else want to chime in on this? Because we've been given an extra 10 minutes. I just came across my phone, so we've been given an extra 10 minutes.
Yeah, I just want to give a big, strong support to what Karl said about the holisticness. I totally believe in that. I think I think sometimes when even the adults are saying, step out of the way and let the young people lead, you're stepping out of the way. Before I step out of the way to allow my children or my grown children to lead, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to show them how to lead. Right? There will be a plan in place as to how you do this. Then after I show them how to lead, then I step behind and let them lead, and also provide that drop net, that if you drop, I am going to catch you, because I have set up the infrastructure to do so. But we are saying, give these young people the baton to lead, when we haven't taught them. We haven't done no succession planning. We haven't empowered them. We haven't mobilized them. We haven't engaged them. But we're saying,
oops. Did we lose you, Pauline?
Battery's running.
Okay.
Yeah. So we haven't done all this, but we're saying, give them the baton. In order for us to give them the baton, we have to. Yeah. Are you hearing? I think
you're in and out a little bit. I think we'll come back to you.
Thing is dropping.
Go
ahead. My thing is.
Karl, did you have a comment or Collin?
I'll comment on that as far as what we have to be doing post-COVID. A lot of the things that we're thinking about, they're all great ideas, but the base of it, and I think I'm going to amplify what Pauline was getting to, because her mic was tripping out, and that is the fact that we have to become really innovative in engaging our young people to lead, but not run away from from coaching and guiding on a daily basis. The whole idea is we know that post-COVID, church is not going to be the same. So we have to be prepared for that. It's not going to be the same. It's going to be a little bit different in that now people are used to FaceTime on screen time, and they become somewhat accustomed to that because they're doing it at work. They're doing it in different areas. So we have to now know how to mix the two so that we have some form of understanding of how to use these tools. But keep in mind, these are just tools. That's all they are. They are just tools. What we have to understand, and I think someone stated in the chat a couple of seconds ago, we have to get back to what is the purpose of AY? What is the intention? What are we trying to groom? What are we trying to build? What are we trying to result in? If we have an understanding as to what that mission is and what that purpose is, then I guarantee you we'll come up with the different tools. We'll use the appropriate tools at the appropriate time. But we can't just think, well, because we're used to being in a virtual space, that's the only means of operating under that we will use going forward. No, we have to first of all understand what is our mission, what is it that we're trying to accomplish, and then we use the appropriate tools to get to where we need to get to.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go back to Pauline, who's now good to go, or connection secure. So over to you.
Yeah, Karl kind of touched on it well. But, Pastor, I have to pull in on this. I take my hat off to you, right? Because sometimes, when you look at AY, being given the position of a youth pastor, you're taking half the load of the church, plus you're having your specialized roles, plus even the AY leaders, they have to be prepared 52 weeks a year. You understand the magnitude of pressure, constantly planning in order to deliver on a weekly basis. And then we, as a church, we sit back and we want to criticize. No, we should be asking, how can I help? What can I do to assist? And when we talk about COVID, right? When we talk about COVID, outside of the damage it has done to some of our own people and to humanity, COVID is one of the best things that could have been done to expedite the readiness for the second coming. Can you imagine that now our older people they are able to use technology? So when time, guys, this is not the real time, time is just setting up to unload on us. So when we're forced to scale up on our A game and to be able to use technology, and we sit back here waiting for the church to be opened, instead of thinking, how can we use now all these skill sets, the new ones that we have now developed, plus the old ones, to further the kingdom of God? So if our young people, like for me, I am not a typical SDA. People may think, okay, as everyone knows, I'm Pauline, right? But nobody can take me away from my church because I was born in the church. I see what the church has done for me. I see how the church has protected me, how the church has supported me. The church has trained me. Before corporate Canada spent their hundreds of thousands of dollars on me, that was my church. So anywhere I go, whether in political Canada, corporate Canada, social Canada, my church comes first. Our young people need to know who they are and whose they are. And that the church leverages you to the next level, to what Karl was saying. And it is bigger than each of us, each of the entities, right? We got to get that back to our young people and understand that with youth ministry is the toughest ministry in the church. So we need to support. That's why you have the Landons, they've been here for a long time. They will be always supporting the young people. They'll be always giving an extra bit for graduation. There's certain people that you can call and they're always there to support the young people because they understand that it's the biggest role in the church. Support our pastor. Now that I'm closer to Pastor Ellis and sees what he has done and what he's constantly doing, come on, guys. We have the best here. Let's put together, collaborate, get off the silo ship and get into synergy, get into collaborative, and let's move the ship because God is coming soon. Christ is coming right around the corner.
Amen. Collin, I'm going to give you the last word, and then we're going to start to wrap up because we have to go into Vespers.
I don't know if, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think what it is for me, and for just my observation, also having young people in my house, it's relevance. You can be the best parent in the world if you think, but if you're not relevant in their lives, they're not going to listen. Same thing goes for any kind of things we actually present to them in church. It has to be relevant. And how it becomes relevant is by having that communication and also having that mentorship that we have in our church. So case in point, I'll tell, let's say, for example, I'll use Karl. Karl, I was young, I looked up to you, or Pauline, and I want not to be like you, but I wanted to do the things you're doing and think out of the box. Once that relationship is there, then you know the person is looking forward to speaking with the person and also to be involved in different activities in the church or different activities outside the church. I think what happens is because of the fact that we do educate our children ourselves, but we also have to make sure when you're doing that education that we're also not forgetting about God. And once we actually keep on doing that, I think that's where the two come intertwined and we actually can move forward and making sure that we keep our children in church. Because there's one thing I think we haven't mentioned is that we're losing a lot of our young people. And I make the point and I tell people, there's not many people that are, or actually is my age, born in Canada and still in the church. There's none. And if they are, there's very few. And the reason why is because, yes, they are professionals, they think they're great, they don't need God, and they leave. There's something that's happening and we need to address that. And how we can address that is making sure that the same God I worship, same God I love, the same God they can love as well and can help them. And the thing is, in everything I do, in everything that I experience, I always am brought back and I'm humbled because God has always put a situation where I need him. And it could be in my job place, it could be in my personal life, it could be in my spiritual life. And that has to be continually explained. So I do this. My friends that have left, I still talk to them. My friends that I know that used to come to church, I still try to communicate with them in a friendly way. And in that so doing, that brings back a lot of things in their life thinking because people leave for different reasons. We don't know. And really and truly, we should care, but we just need to still be their friends. And not to be long-winded, but that is something that I would like to do more because I'm tired of seeing us lose a lot of our young people.
Mm-hmm. Wow, we could go on for much longer. We really, truly only scratch the surface. I want to just really sum up some of the last points that we're hearing here, that going forward into the future, technology needs to play an important role, but more importantly, there needs to be an intergenerational mentorship that makes things relevant, whether that's making it relevant that they understand they're getting training will be beneficial for their future, whether it makes it relevant that shows them how God will work in their lives or can work through their lives through different leadership opportunities. It's making it relevant. Of course, there's so much more, but to wrap up, I saw a comment from Norma Wiggin, and she actually sent me a poem today, and I think it's kind of appropriate to just finish that off with talking about the youth. This is a poem that she had worked on since the beginning of COVID and finished just recently. She says, "The church should be a blessed home for the lost and lonely, for weary saints in need of God's glory. We have a heart and we have a hand. Linked together, great space can be spanned. Let us come together, our gifts to share. The old we are losing, the young we can spare. Let's pave the way this church to save. Forget traditions, we need to be brave. Give them away to save this race. God has the power, he'll give the grace. Young women and men, even tweens can tell a more modern story to touch the hearts well. They're younger and stronger, they need no reminder. God gave us these children his lessons to teach, with their modern technology all nations to reach. So hand over the baton, give them a chance to expand the message, let God's love advance. They can lead this great march and keep faith alive. Just think about it, the Beatitudes must survive." I want to thank you all for watching. There's so much that we can do, but we are a family. God has brought us together as a family. And if we work as a family, we can work through the challenges and do a mighty work to finish the work so Jesus we can see his face when he comes through the clouds. Thank all the panelists, all those of you that have participated in the chats. And I ask that you stay on as we turn it over now to our Vespers team. You have been watching, your mic is on. The topic has been AY past, present, and future. I am Pastor Sean Ellis. On behalf of this panel, thank you so much for watching Apple Creek Seventh-day Adventist Church AY program.
Amen.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.